Hi there, film buffs, and welcome to the latest episode of Double Feature. I'm your host Pedro, and what do we have on the agenda for you today? Well, copycats.
How original.
Ripoffs of beloved and critically acclaimed hits that are sometimes derided, forgotten, and easily dismissed as not so creative imitations. Now we know that anything that is moderately to extremely successful is bound to produce imitations, and that's certainly true in today's modern landscape of content excess. And while it's true that copies attempting to replicate or capture a bit of the success of the original have always been around, the early years of the blockbuster era saw an unprecedented number of cheaper productions from all over the world, going for a big piece of that box office pie. Star Wars inspired a countless number of inferior space operas, like the Italian ripoff starring David Hasselhoff's Star Crash. Roger Corman's production of Battle Beyond the Stars featuring special effects designed by a young filmmaker named James Cameron, and of course the unproduced Argo. Ridley Scott's influential Alien was another example of an often copied concept. Alien ripoffs include Saturn III starring Kirk Douglas, Farrah Fawcett, and Harvey Keitel, and the Italian production of Contamination, two titles that failed to match the 1979 title in either quality or profitability. But no movie fueled a bigger wave of imitators than the OG blockbuster Jaws.
I think we may have another shark problem.
During the late 1970s and early 1980s, there seemed to be a new creature film lurking at the local cinema almost every other weekend. Some titles like Orca and Tentacles attempted to copy not only Jaws, but also the disaster movies of the 1970s. They tried both to replicate the tense atmosphere of an unknown predator hiding in the deep waters and bring in some A-list names. Names such as Richard Harris, Shelley Winters, Henry Fonda, and even director John Huston. Despite showing little originality, I think these titles tried to bring something new to the table, but they were the exception, not the rule. Most of the titles that followed Steven Spielberg's blueprint were simply bad and never aspired to be anything else other than a cash grab. Case in point, the Mexican production Tintorera, a softcore porn entry disguised as a monster movie. Of course, there was also the occasional self-aware, tongue-in-cheek copycat like Piranha, a movie with such a unique charm and unprecedented levels of fun, even Steven Spielberg surrendered himself to its campiness. So with the virtually limitless universe of monster-driven movies to explore, you may be wondering where to start. Never fear, I've got the answer. Two titles that are not only Jaws ripoffs, but also exercises in bad acting and dubious special effects. Two movies featuring ludicrous plots and insane confrontations. And two entries that share the absence of the only figure that could have easily solved the problem, Steve Guttenberg. And the worst thing these movies have in common, I've actually seen them. So yeah, let's share the pain and get to it.
Killer fish. From a robbery that's incredible to a rendezvous that's undetectable to a recovery that's impossible.
Killer Fish takes place in South America, in the heart of the Brazilian rainforest, the setting for a daring heist where Kate Neville, Robert Lansky, brothers Warren and Lloyd, and their driver Hans orchestrate a precision theft of priceless emeralds from a mine. Their strategy involves creating chaos by setting fire to fuel tanks, providing the perfect diversion to pilfer the gems from the mine's vault. The stolen emeralds are sealed in a case marked and intentionally sunk in a lake, turning the eventual retrieval into a caper of its own. As the group, led by the mastermind Paul Diller, deliberates on the next move, tensions rise. They decide to wait 60 days before retrieving the gems, but suspicions and jealousies emerge within the group. Diller then confesses that he released 50 piranhas into the lake just before the heist to protect the loot, and the school is now numbering around 10,000. If this movie's description makes you think, that's almost like two different movies mashed into one, then you're absolutely correct. It seems that the production powers that be, namely Sir Lou Grade and Fawcett Majors Productions, headed by Lee Majors and, you've guessed it, his wife, Farrah Fawcett Majors, never bothered to ask or answer a very simple question.
Why?
Now I'm gonna be upfront with you, the movie's not great, mainly because of how uneven it is. 75% heist and 25% gory monster movie. But there are some great elements that elevate this mediocre title into the pantheon of laughable excellence. For one, Karen Black is part of the cast, so you can definitely count on her demented persona.
Don't you tell me what I would or wouldn't do.
Then there's the $6 million man himself, Lee Majors, hamming it up all the way.
Well, believe me, it is going to get fascinating.
And every time Roy Brocksmith's Ollie's on screen, you don't know if you should laugh, cry, or cringe.
I said to her, I'll do the bumping, but you're going to have to find somebody else to grind.
And well, if you ever needed evidence why Margaux Hemingway's career as an actress never took off, then, well, look no further.
I was referring to his talent as a photographer.
The genre mismatch doesn't particularly flow well together, and that's mainly due to the director's decision to save all the carnage and mayhem for the third act. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the director's name?
Antonio Margheriti.
Yep, that very same. But beyond all the laughs, there are really some positives that need to be mentioned about Margheriti's title. The kills were well executed, and near the end of the third act there's a particularly tense scene where most of the cast is on a boat that's slowly sinking. Any resemblance with the final sequence in Jaws is a mere coincidence. In a nutshell, Killer Fish is tacky enough to be pleasantly enjoyed in either the company of friends or copious amounts of alcohol. A B-movie with a capital B that isn't nearly as bad as the other piranha movie directed by a future Academy Award winner.
A super breed of killer fish that can swim, fly, and attack at any time.
Why don't we let him decide that?
Scomparso? Come sarebbe?
Si stava allenando al windsurf e a un certo punto non l'abbiamo più visto.
Io vivo qui da 30 anni e non si è mai visto uno squalo di proporzioni tali da poter fare una cosa del genere.
Io vado a fare il bagno, chi viene?
Io, aspettatemi!
In the coastal community of Port Harbor, a picturesque seaside town, the tranquility is shattered when a young windsurfer is brutally attacked and killed by a giant great white shark. As the horror unfolds, author Peter Benton and professional shark hunter Ron Hammer recognize the impending danger, but their warnings are promptly ignored by the ambitious Mayor William Wells. Mayor Wells, eyeing a gubernatorial campaign, refuses to acknowledge the shark's threat, fearing that canceling the windsurfing regatta would jeopardize his political aspirations. In an attempt to address the rising menace, Mayor Wells ordered the installation of shark nets. They proved to be highly ineffective. Unable to deny the truth any longer, Mayor Wells invites Benton and Hammer to set out to sea and eliminate the shark. Does this sound familiar to you? If it does, it's because it's the exact same plot of Jaws, mixed with a whole lot of Jaws 2. In fact, Universal sued Horizon Productions, the studio behind The Last Shark, and won an injunction, resulting in the film being pulled from theaters, but not before grossing over 18 million in the US in its first month alone. My personal opinion, I think Universal was a bit too hasty. I mean, there are clearly a lot of differences between the first two Jaws movies and this title. For example, in Jaws 2 the characters are actively involved in sailboating, whereas in The Last Shark, the whole plot revolves around windsurfing. Worlds apart if you ask me. The movie is riddled with poor special effects and continuity errors. It seems nobody was too bothered about matching the shark's stock footage with the actual animatronics of the shark. Well, there's also the incredible stupid plot point around the mayor's whole election platform being based on a windsurfing competition. Quite a low-effort manifesto and a harsh comment on voters' intelligence in my opinion. But I choose to see the positives, and the movie does have its moments, like the inspirational scene where the shark bites a character in half before lunging into the helicopter, dragging it into the sea.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
But to be fair, The Last Shark is an extremely ambitious piece of cinema. Director Enzo G. Castellari has a rather interesting approach that's quite economical. Whereas the 1975 blockbuster spent money on a trio, the Italian production wastes no time nor money and combines Quint and Hooper into one character, Hammer, and repurposes Peter Benton, who goes from horror author to shark hunter and authoritarian figure in just a couple of scenes. But all jokes aside, the movie achieved its goal and managed to become a minor global hit. After being pulled from the US theaters, the film was then released on video in Japan as Jaws Returns, a supposed sequel to Jaws. And in Brazil, the movie capitalized on the title of the 1975 mega hit Tubarão, or simply Shark, leading audiences to flock to the nearest cinema, thinking they were about to watch the latest confrontation between sharks and the Brody family. I think ultimately the biggest sin The Last Shark commits was actually convincing Universal to continue the Jaws saga, and as a result, now we live in a world where Jaws 3D exists. I think I made my case. There aren't any more arguments I can use to defend, present, or even attack this entry. I'm just gonna say it, if you enjoy the so bad it's good genre, you'll have a great time watching The Last Shark. After all, the movie is unintentionally bad and really amusing. Something that unfortunately cannot be said about the painfully annoying Sharknado series. So give this one a go. Once again, I'm Pedro from Vinyl and Celluloid, thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed what I had to say about these two movies, pop by my Letterboxd page where you can read my reviews on over 350 titles, spanning over 7 decades. Until next time, keep the reels rolling.